Where the guys who like to go on the flats, well, they've had their chance. Some riders may drop out once we hit the mountains, but for now, one more day in the sun. Rather hot sun, as a matter of fact. It'll be over 90 degrees. Riding alongside perhaps the greatest time trialist the sport has ever seen. Been through the time trial. That water already under the bridge. But Miguel Indurain, the man from Spain, is now in yellow. Course won't kill the guys today, but it's a gritty, classic French course. You know, on today's route, as we enter the south of France, we're going to see some historic landmarks. Some ancient. We roll along the green hills. This is wine country, close to Bordeaux. Some of the monuments more modern. 30 years ago, almost to the day, a French military truck crashed into a bridge in this village of Port de Couz. Moments later, the Tour de France came rolling through. The riders stopping, getting off their bikes, and saving all but 8 of the injured civilians who later died. Today, a tribute and a testimony to the spirit of the Tour as over 170 cyclists roll over the same roads and through the same streets. It hasn't seen this Tour since that same day in 1964. At 6.2 miles into this race, 4 riders broke away from the peloton led by Jackie Durand. We're now 60 miles in with 4 riders 3 minutes and 55 seconds ahead of the group.
Well, the breakaway still continues to stay out in front, although there are signs now that the strong chasing by Benesto is beginning to nibble away at a lead that has gone out to 4:40. The latest check we've had, it's come just inside the 4-minute margin now, and the breakaway is Gianluca Bortolami, Jackie Durand, Stephen Hodge and Marco Serpellini. And this is Serpellini here, youngest man in the race. He shot to the fore in 1990 as a junior world champion, but hasn't had anything outstanding as an amateur since that time, but they snapped him up and he's turned professional. There's Jackie Durand, who has won the French championship for the 2nd year in succession, and really is wanting to honor those national colors on his back. The French really are getting a little bit desperate for success in this year's Tour de France. And the other rider up here is Stephen Hodge from Australia, and always rides a great race. There's 3 Australians in the race. Stephen Hodge, 4 Australians now. I was doing Patrick Jonker in his first Tour and Injustice, so he rides here with a Dutch license and therefore carries, for the moment at least, a Dutch nationality. But anyway, there's Stephen Hodge, Neil Stevens and Phil Anderson are the principal Australians in the Tour, and now we've got Hodge here in the breakaway.
Well, the riders here in the breakaway coming to the toughest part of today's course, although it's only up to about 430 meters, which is just over 1,200 feet. This is a very, very tough area around here because these roads are very heavy roads. There's a race down here in the early part of the season in May, June time called the Route du Sud, and then one in later June called the Midi Libre. Well, this is the area that those races go through, and I can tell you I've ridden those races, and it's very, very tough, these kind of roads, because they don't roll along. There's no rolling momentum when you get onto them, and you can see the riders here now are really starting to suffer quite a bit.
And it's Bortolami, Paul, who's trying to keep the rhythm in the group, setting the pace. He's with the most again. I wonder if he'll take it. No, oh, the second man did. That's Serpellini, straight over his head. I bet you that feels good.
You see how the riders here are sharing the bottle from the side of the road. But one thing that they very rarely do is actually drink the water, because after 10 days, the organism, the body is starting to get rather weak, and a slight infection from dirty water can put a rider out of the Tour de France overnight. So you notice not one of them actually drank their water. They just used it to soak themselves down a little bit and try to keep cool.
63 kilometers, about 41 miles still to race, and they've got a lead of just tickling 4 minutes now, which would still give second place overall to Bortolami, but would cool down the surprise a bit of having a new race leader today. And Bortolami swings off the front and comes back behind Stephen Hodge, who rides for the Andorra-based Festina team, but a very strong Australian man he is too.
So Miguel Indurain from Spain is in the yellow jersey. Surprise, surprise, but his team Benesto is working hard to protect him, being pushed by Gianluca Bortolami. Back in a moment. You know, yellow is not the only jersey you can wear here in the 94 Tour de France. Of course, Indurain in yellow now after yesterday's win. Jamaluddin Abdujaparov has been in the green jersey, honoring the finest sprinter on the Tour since the first stage, and Peter de Klerk wears the red and white polka dot as the best mountain goat. Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwood now with the call of stage 10.
And now we can see Miguel Indurain here trying to make sure his team are chasing and limiting the gains of Bortolami. Do you think, Paul, in fact, that he will not try to chase him down, but will just try to keep him under control.
That's definitely what his tactic will be. He doesn't want to burn his team out because we've still got 2 weeks to go in this Tour de France, and he knows he's going to need his team a lot in that last week, because the last week, I think, is really going to be very tough. What he'll try and do is just make sure that the breakaway doesn't take on huge, gigantic proportions, 10 or 15 minutes. He's just controlling at the moment, making sure that it stabilizes out, and hopefully when the race accelerates naturally, as it always does towards the end of the stage, he'll be able to pull those breakaways back into the fold. But to him, not one of those 4 riders is a danger.
And there is the big peloton of the Tour de France. 175 riders setting out this morning. And we have 4 in the breakaway, and as far as we know, nobody left behind today by the big pack. They're all in there, so it makes a field of 171. And the narrow roads here of the villages in the department of the Lot are always likely to cause a little problem, because they are narrow, and a change of direction and a tumble is always in prospect. That's why Indurain rides near the front. 4 minutes 4 seconds, so it's just nudged up a little bit.
Just a little bit, but it's hovering there at the moment. It's not decreasing or increasing at any major proportion. But it's interesting to note, I think, that Indurain this year seems to have changed the composition of his team quite a lot, so that he's got a strong team for the flatter stages. Looking at the riders here in his team, we've got Jean-Francois Bernard, who's an excellent rouleur, as they call it in French, a man who's used to riding a tempo at the front like this. He's got Gérard Rouet, who is a great fighter as well, a man who's used to doing a lot of work for his team. And also Melchior Mauri, who's a fantastic time trialist, a man too to put a lot of force into Miguel Indurain's team on the flatter stages, but he may well be a little bit isolated in the mountains.
Yeah, I think only Unzaga can climb anywhere near Indurain, and that's not for too long when he starts to wind up in the high mountains. But even so, when you've got a team which runs on such a higher budget as Bernesto does, then they can afford to buy the best riders to work for Miguel, and that's these workhorses in full flight now. But they're going to have to chase hard, because they gave that breakaway quite a lead, over 4 minutes at one stage. It's only a short stage of 100 miles, which to these riders must seem like almost a day off.
Well, this is the Bernesto train at the front doing all the work. There is Gérard Rouet, a man who will be a big help to Miguel Indurain in the lower mountains, but obviously a little bit too heavy to get over the big mountain passes. But I think Indurain has betted on this, the fact that once he goes to the big mountains, Tony Romming is going to be fairly lonely as well, because he won't have too many teammates who can follow him, and then it's a question of man against man and really survival.
Absolutely. You may have caught a glimpse just a few seconds ago of a bottle being held off. I noted it landed at the feet of one of the spectators, who quickly grabbed it, and that will be the souvenir of the day for that spectator. Well, yesterday I think the souvenir of the Tour went into the crowd, because Chris Boardman threw off his Space Age racing helmet, which he has used all of the time in his big time trials, because it simply was too hot on his head, and it landed at the foot of some spectators. So that was a great souvenir during the time trial yesterday.
Well, you can see on a stage like this, there's an awful lot of action at the back of the field, and this is Leonis Barutia from the Once squad. He's been back to the team manager to go and get some bottles. Well, the rule concerning that is, if a rider from a team wants to go back for bottles, he has to drop back behind the referee's car and call up his team manager then, and you can see the bottles here being handed up. He'll then have to ride back into the main field and distribute those bottles to the rest of his team, and it's very important on hot stages like this to keep topped up with fluids.
And there he goes, pedaling his way back to the field. Then he's got to go through the field and find all the riders in the pink jerseys and start dishing out the drinks.
Right now,
it looks to me like it was the Dutch rider on the Chazal squad.
Well, you're right, it's Marco Vermy. Newcomer on the Dutch team has gone down. Touch of wheels, always a problem.
And I'll tell you what, the hotter it gets in this Tour de France, the more crashes there are going to be, because riders in this heat get tired very quickly and tend to lose their reflexes quite a bit. Vermeer there looking a little bit stunned, giving the doctor a little bit of chance to look at him, and it won't be too long before he'll get back up there. He doesn't look too bad. The mechanics there very quickly to give his bike a quick change. A lot of blood coming out of his elbow there, but he'll soon be back up and in contact with the main field again.
And once he does get back, then the doctor will go to him and try and dress his wound on the move. But for the moment, he's got to get back under his own steam. That's why this is the hardest bicycle race in the world. And then they'll be able to look after him. The good advantage is, of course, the whole convoy has not gone by. and once they settle down, he should be able to nip through the cars and rejoin the race.
You see, one other point for people who are always worried about looking after themselves when they ride a bicycle, you see, he chose not to use any gloves today, which is a very difficult thing to do in the heat. A rider will try everything to keep as cool as possible. He will get away from his helmet, he will get away from his gloves, and that's what's happened today to Vermeer. He's actually crashed on his hand, and that's going to be a very long time healing up that injury.
And now the doctor is back in service, and they're going to dress this wound. And Gerard Porte, the doctor, very experienced race doctor, and understands cyclists' requirements as well as understands how their body works, because he knows that they don't want to abandon the Tour de France, and he won't pull them out of the race unless he feels there is no alternative. Nobody wants to leave the Tour de France because of a crash, and Gerard Porte knows it. But he'll treat him quickly and effectively, and he's such a well-trusted and liked doctor on the race that even the race referees won't watch this too closely. They'll drive away from the scene.
What's that Sinatra sang about? Pick yourself up and get back in the race. That's life on the Tour de France. The picture is worth 1,000 words. Lon McCarron certainly found that out from a photojournalist here in France covering the Tour.
With 189 riders, it's tough to stand out in the Tour de France, but covering those riders are nearly 4,000 members of the media. And standing out from that pack takes real talent. John Pierce has it. A still photographer covering his 28th Tour, Pierce hasn't let live TV take away the importance of his work.
A still picture can probably tell the way it really is, you know, and you can tell sometimes the expression on their faces, you know, whether they're in trouble or not, how far they are behind the next guy, you know, be it half a wheel or a whole wheel or whatever.
But I always have great kind of take a lot of pleasure going back and reading over all the articles that was done, and you look at the photograph, and like this, anytime you see a really good photograph, 9 times out of 10 it's marked on the bottom of it, photographed by John Pierce.
As boss of the company, John Pierce has sent many a fine photographer out to cover a bike race, only to have them come back empty-handed, some without shooting a single frame. A testament of how difficult this sport is to capture on film. Well, John's expertise stems from the fact he was a pretty darn good bike racer in England, and that gave him a sense of knowing where the action will take place.
That's a good point. I think perhaps because I raced a lot. So when I look at the course for a day's racing, I would pick a place to go, and it's usually where the lead group splits or the attack goes or something like that.
You won't see Pierce firing off 15 shots of a cyclist rounding a corner. No, he sizes up a target carefully and snaps only when his critical eye sees something that's special.
Right now, Indurain is picture perfect anyway. He has a great style, great physique, and I would prefer to take his picture, should we say, than Rominger, and yet they're both good at the same disciplines, you know. Indurain naturally looks good. Lance Armstrong is world champion, and the last job I did was in Pittsburgh, where he won. And there's nothing better than the rainbow jersey crossing the line with his arms up, and the picture was picture perfect. So that's my picture job done for the day, for the year probably. To my mind, the best picture is like a side-on shot of 3 or 4 guys out of the saddle, really pulling hard on the handlebars, looking at the line, concentrating on the last 200 meters, which is the maximum effort anybody could make, I think.
This is probably the biggest selling photo in cycling. This John Pierce original we ambushed Paul Sherwin with is not.
Well, I've seen this guy somewhere before. In fact, it's a very old photograph. You must have paid an awful lot of money for this.
Well, I don't know if anybody would pay an awful lot of money for it. Who is that? That's you, right?
It looks like me, but very many years ago. In fact, that was in 1979 and probably was in Paris-Roubaix.
Phil,
I'll tell you what, Paul, you didn't even shave your legs for this race.
I think like all good photographers, he has a feel for the sport. Another man is Graham Watson. Those guys, they understand the sport. They understand what's going through the riders' minds. And I think that's reflected in the photographs that they take.
John would like to get away from the race course and tend to business in the office, but 2/3 of the photos his company sells are his. So you're bound to see his mug at the Tour de France for many years to come.
Lon, I don't know when Paul Sherwin looked better. Breakaway, 3.5 minutes ahead of the peloton.
And so the 4 leaders are still clear, and they're now on the climb of the Côte de Montfaucon. 118 kilometers covered, and the lead has not lost a lot. It's now 3 minutes and 30 seconds. The very latest check has just come in off the course, and the rider's being told that now. So Gianluca Bortolami on the left of our picture At the back here, number 77 is Marco Serpellini, the youngest man in the Tour de France. The national champion of France is there too on the far right. That is Jackie Durand. And then the other rider is the Australian Stephen Hodge. Good to see an Australian on the attack now. And all four of the Aussies in this race, I can tell you, are enjoying the Tour now, are beginning to settle in. They're a tough breed. Now we go over towards the top of this climb. It's only a fourth category climb. Bortolami has been the powerhouse, not surprisingly, because he's still into second place overall on the road and wants to keep it that way. But there are signs that Indurain's team are going to close it down. The race going very quickly indeed. There's the main field now threading its way towards the climb at Montfaucon. And I can tell you that the speed has been tremendous today, 27 miles an hour, and they've done well to hold that lead.
They really have over a course like this, because they're very tough roads here. I know them. I've ridden several times down here when I rode for a French team, and these roads, especially in this heat, are even harder. The Benesto team are doing an excellent job at the front, just keeping the tempo nicely to bring this group back slowly. They've been up around almost 5 minutes at one stage, and it's come down now to 3.5 minutes. But they're starting to suffer, the four riders in the front. You can see by the way they're nodding around a little bit. Every time it slows down, though, Bortolami is the man who goes to the front to egg them on and to push them a little bit harder.
Well, this has been an excellent attack by Bortolami, and it wouldn't surprise me if it's been suggested to him by his team captain, Tony Rominger. A chance perhaps for him to take the yellow jersey, but even more for Rominger's Mapai team to take a bit of a rest today and make the Benesto team chase, because tomorrow the Pyrenees begin with a climb. The Tour has never been up tomorrow to finish the stage, and everybody is saying they will be very, very surprised. It's steep and it climbs very quickly to great heights and should provide us with a terrific climax at the finish tomorrow. And everybody looking to see if Rominger and Indurain are going to fight this Tour out, and we'll know tomorrow.
As we look forward to 2 days in the Pyrenees, Phil, although I don't know if these guys are looking forward to them. 79 miles into stage 10. 3 men broke away from the peloton. They were led by Jean-Claude Quilloty of Team Gone. There are still 4 men out in front of the peloton with over 3.5-minute lead on the rest of the pack. Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwin are watching the pace of stage 10's race.
So it's still around 3 3/4 minutes across the board, and that's looking good for Bortolami to take his second place. We're now just 10 miles from the finish, and this leading group, you know, there's still a chance, Paul. They won't even be joined by those 3 chasers.
Well, that would be really a deserve for them, because they've been in the front for so long now, and it would be nice for them to hold on and keep away and take the victory. It's difficult to know at the moment who the victory would go to. I don't know Serpellini as a finisher too well. He's obviously been the junior world champion, but it's very difficult after a long breakaway of 4 riders to know who is going to be the strongest man. Jackie Durand will maybe have a chance if he can get clear of the other riders, but he's not a renowned sprinter. You see Bortolami now starting to worry a little bit about the gap behind. Keeps putting his hands up. He's waiting for his team manager to come and give him confirmation. The official race distances at the moment are 1 minute and 45 seconds is their advantage over the 3 chasers, and 3 minutes and 10 seconds over the main field.
To there, and I said earlier Christian Hen was a bronze medalist in the Olympic Games in Los Angeles. Well, I did him an injustice there. He's a little bit younger than that. He took his bronze medal in Seoul in 1988 and turned professional. That was a marvellous day for Germany. I remember being there, and they got silver and bronze and couldn't believe it. There's those time checks we've heard, 1 minute 25, back to the chasers. They're going to have to work very hard, because these 4 riders are feeling now the effects of the finish and finding their second wind, and these 2 riders are going to have to work very hard to bring them back. Jean-Claude Quilloty, a little cramped style. He's a good sprinter. On the GAN team, they've had a lot of bad luck since Chris Boardman gave them the yellow jersey for 3 days. They lost Didier Roux, a man they'd hoped would lead them into the mountains. He crashed and left the Tour. And Boardman now riding in the pack and talking daily of giving up to concentrate on winning the World Pursuit Championship.
This is Erwin Nijboer on the front, a Dutch rider on the Benesto squad, keeping the place. You see the little twitch of the arm there. That's to indicate to the rider behind that he's finished with his turn. He's now going to slide to the back of the line to recuperate a little bit in the slipstream of all the other riders there. That's a signal that riders use quite a lot, especially in the team time trial. Just a little twitch. No words communicated between them, just that sign, and the rider behind knows that it's his turn to go forward.
Indurain always makes a lot of space for himself in the big bunch. You see every day little tumbles and crashes, but you very, very rarely, in fact I can't recall having seen Indurain be involved in a crash, because he makes his own space and rides near the front. But of course you do have to have the strength to do that, and many of the riders are forced to ride at the back.
Reminder to our World Cup soccer fans, 2 games for you starting from here. We'll hit the Pyrenees, where all of Spain will come out for Indurain. But the day before the mountains, the riders make their way along 105-mile stage 10. Castles in the countryside, ancient villages, much more of a Mediterranean feel down here than we had up in the north of Paris. 93 miles into stage 10 now, with 12 to go. 4-man breakaway trying to hang tough, but 3 chasers are a minute behind them. Overall, 3 minutes from the front 4 to the back of the pack. Phil and Paul.
Now we're with the leaders, and again the day is an absolute scorcher as we approach the last time bonus sprint of the day at Savignac. 150 kilometers now have passed by, and this has been a chase all day to bring back these 4 riders, and they haven't done it yet. Bortolami is the man with the most to gain. He's hanging on by a hair to second place overall now in the race, ahead of his teammate Tony Rominger. And it looks as though now we have 4 riders totally committed, and they could still succeed. Now I wonder, in fact, if they'll allow Bortolami the last time bonus sprint on the open road today. And the answer, I think, is no, Paul, because it looks as though Jackie, no Bortolami. Well, we can't tell from our camera position, but that was Bortolami taking on to Jackie Durand at the front there. That's the last time bonus sprint of the Tour de France this year on the open road. We've got the sprint time bonuses on the finishing line today, and then they're all gone. Bortolami has taken around about 12 seconds today, slightly more perhaps, and if he gets a bonus in the finish and wins by about 2.5 minutes, then he will be second overall. And look at this, Paul, the final drive on from the team manager here.
Well, that's Suarez Cuevas, the team manager there, the second team manager of the Mapei class team, coming up to give the information. He said, look, you guys had better get yourselves sorted out, because there's a 3-man group coming along. They're just 1 minute behind, so stop worrying about the little bonus sprints. Get down there, put the pressure on, because it's very close. In fact, here are the 3 leaders, and I make it on my watch a little under a minute now.
Well, that's a great chase, and it's going to give us a great finish, but you know, those 4 riders fully deserve it today, having broken away in the first 2.5 miles, 4 kilometers of the stage. A cheeky attack for a man who was so far up the overall classification, and he's put a lot of pressure on Benesto. And now, in fact, the Polti team have come to the front and started now to chase along with Benesto, so they might feel they still have a possible chance of catching them. The 4 leaders under 10 kilometers to go. There's the result of the sprint. Durand getting it very close indeed from Bortolami and Serpellini.
I think there's been a problem here, Phil, because in fact Bortolami is no longer in the 3 leaders, and in fact I heard that he had a little bit of a problem. If the camera could just turn back, I think he may well have punctured when we were off camera there.
Well, that's a shame. We've gone back to the 3 chasers, and we may well have missed a puncture. Nothing's come through to us on race radio yet, but clearly in our picture the man who's missing is Gianluca Bortolami, and we'll have to wait to find out exactly what happens. We'll know pretty soon, but these are the chasers now.
Well, it's 45 seconds to these riders, and they're obviously, I think, now got a very good chance of getting across to the 3 leaders. And it may well be that if Bortolami has had a puncture, he will get a quick change from his team manager, and he should be able to get back into contention. But that's such a sad thing to happen so close to the finish line. 10 kilometers to go, and he's disappeared from the 3 leaders.
Well, these 3 are slipping back into top gear again now. They're fighting for their lives to survive, and Jackie Durand knows all about it. Remember the early days of the Tour de France when Durand was in the lead with Stephen Swart of New Zealand, and then the pair were caught. They shook hands and said, well, at least we gave it a go. He tries very frequently for the breakaway. Jackie Durand, a winner of the Tour of Flanders Classic with a long breakaway. That was a surprise, but he's not a lucky rider. He's a real attacking rider. And now the 3 will know, they'll sense that they're not very far ahead of them, because they can spot the escort motorbikes and making sure the road is clear up ahead there.
3 chasing the 4 in front, only leaves 170 other riders. We continue to follow the whole field in just a moment.
Back to the picture, and Durand has gone, and that's a great move. Hodge seems itching to want to join him, but hasn't done so. He's leaving Serpellini to try and close the gap. And Serpellini, I'm not too sure whether those young legs have got much left right now, as Jackie Durand has attacked. And that's a good move at this stage of the race, because the chasers might come up, and unless one of those tell him that Durand has gone, they may never know.
Well, this is the way Jackie Durand won his national championships a couple of years ago. He jumped away, and it was just about on the line that they caught him. The same scenario happened this year. He was actually dropped many, many times in the national championships, and then with a couple of kilometers to go, he launched a great counter-attack, and the sprinters came and died just a couple of centimeters behind him, and he took a championships again. And you see these two riders look very tight here. Serpellini's going. He's not getting a great deal of help from Hodge, but he just lifts the pace a little bit. Very good move by Jackie Durand there. That was the way to win this stage. If he can just keep it clear now, he's got about 7 kilometers to go to the finish. He's really got to keep the pressure on. The only way to win from a group like this is to win alone, because then you know that you've got the victory.
Well, we've lost Bortolami. We're anxious now to cut back to the chasing 3 and see indeed if they are chasing 4. Maybe Bortolami's back with them. We didn't see the going of him, and strangely enough, our race contact with the actual tour cars haven't reported the happening of Bortolami, which we find rather strange. However, he's gone from our screens, and now Durand is the man out there, the lonely figure on the long straight road. Certainly not the best type of road to attack on, because he's constantly in sight of the pursuers.
I tell you, this really will be one for the French if Jackie Durand can keep away, and he's really opening the gap very easily now, very nicely. It looks to me as if Hodge is totally tired. He really can't do anything at all. He's coming to the front now and again to try and help. The 3 riders here about to catch Bortolami, so then the race is going to take on a different atmosphere, because he knows they're there. He will start to work with them, and he was the strongest man of the 4-man group that was been in the lead from the first few kilometers.
As Chiesa there just taps Bortolami and says, come on, we're here now. In fact, it's now coming through that it wasn't a puncture to Bortolami, but a mechanical problem with his bike, which cost him the gap with the leaders. He's gone back now to the 4 chasers, but, you know, looking at his face now, mentally, I think he's been broken here. And although he's gone back to the 3 chasers there, I'm not too sure he's got much fight left in him. Now, the crowds here are going to love this, the sight of the champion of France, proudly wearing the tricolour national champion jersey, heading towards the finish and on his own as we go through La Roque des Arcs.
Well, that was the move to make. He really had to wait. It was very unfortunate for Bortolami that he wasn't there, but Durand did exactly the right thing. He's not a good sprinter. If he'd left it to the finishing line to try and fight it out with a sprint, it could have gone anyway, but not one of those riders is a great winner. And Jackie Durand has done the great thing here by jumping clear. The French are going to go crazy tonight if their national champion can take a stage victory, and this will be his first stage victory in the Tour de France if he can just hold on for another 6 kilometers.
Well, I'll tell you what, Paul, it's a great way to win a stage, and he fully deserves it, to go out and race all day in this heat and then finish it off with an attack like this. These are the true adventurers of the Tour de France. They're the ones that you want to see succeed, because they put the heart and soul into chasing success. And now he's got his head down. He's thinking only of holding that rhythm as long as he can, and he knows he's got the gap. Can he hang on? He'll be looking for the 5-kilometer banner, and then the nicest sight of the lot will be that yellow, red kite in the sky, which means he's inside the last kilometer. First visit of the Tour. There's the 5-kilometer. He's looking next for the kite. You know, it's the first time the Tour de France has come to Cahors. It will be fitting, wouldn't it? The national champion of France takes the stage.
Well, it's going to be very tight on the line. It's 45 seconds now back to that group with Bortolami in there and Jackie Durand going clear. He's getting an information here. In fact, that isn't Cyril Guimard who's driving the team car there. That's Bernard Kilfen, a man who won a stage in the Tour de France himself, one of the longest breakaways of the Tour. And Kilfen knows exactly what's going through Durand's mind at the moment. Durand is really getting down as low as he can. You see how he's almost got his head on the handlebars there, trying to get every last little bit out of his body. And looking back down the road there is nobody who can catch him at the moment.
If Jackie Durand can hold on, it would be the first stage win for a Frenchman since 1993. For a lot of the riders in the 94 Tour to win a stage, the French favorite, Jackie Durand, is in the driver's seat.
Again, Kilfen comes up alongside to give him the information. He'll be getting the information all the time from the race radio. 45 seconds is his lead over the 4 riders, and looking back down the road there, I can't see the 2 riders he was with before, Serpellini, Marco Serpellini from the Lampre squad, and also Hodge, who's been riding for the Festina squad.
Well, this is a marvellous moment. He won't be enjoying it right now. He'll have a nervous tingle down his back, and he'll be just hoping. He won't look over his shoulder. He'll be too frightened to. He's counting these kilometres down, and aren't we all? 3 kilometres to go now for Giron.
I'll tell you what, Phil, I made it actually 1 minute on my own unofficial time check back to that group of 4 riders, so he's really walking away with the race now. He keeps looking over his shoulder, though, just to reassure himself that he's got this race in the bag.
Well, he's a man who's passed through his home area, although he was born from the Mayenne area of France, which is up in the north of France. He lives down in the Limousin now, in the Dordogne. Having turned pro in 1990, he shocked everybody with an immense break, longest break, in fact, of the Tour of Flanders, to win that back in 1992. And now, the last 2 years, the national champion. This stage win will make everybody believe in Jackie Giron, because they've always thought upon him as a fortunate winner of the Tour of Flanders, and often you get one lucky win in your career, but never another one. Well, that's not the case with this man. He's gone out all of the time. He's searched for victories. There's no man in this race deserves it more than Jackie Giron today.
Well, he's fought all the way since the opening stages of this year's Tour de France. In fact, he did a pretty good ride in the team time trial, and then in the individual time trial, the prologue, the opener, and then that stage down to Boulogne, he was away for a long time with Stephen Swarton. It looked as if they might have stolen the show there, but every chance he gets, he will have a go, and that's a fantastic thing with riders. I love a rider who will actually try and get clear and go for a solo victory. That's the best way to savor a victory, because he'll be able to savor it all the way down that last kilometre as he comes down here towards the finishing line. He knows now that he's going to get the victory. Those 2 riders who are with him, they're completely out of the picture now. The chasing group of 4 riders are 1 minute and 5 seconds back, and the main field at the 4 kilometre banner were at 2 minutes 30 seconds. So the victory today is going to go to the champion of France, and whatever people have said, you don't get so many lucky victories in life, and if you keep coming up with them, then I think it's a question of you make your luck by riding at the front of the race.
And there it's official, 1 minute 12 seconds. He's ridden away from them with a superb show of time trialing technique. Jackie Giron is now going to lift the cloud off the Tour de France, because we're going to have our first French stage winner. It's coming to town. We're visiting for the Tour for the first time, which I find very strange to believe, because Cahors is on many race routes, but never before been on the Tour de France race route. And the mayor of the town here has made a great welcome to the Tour today, all day. There we are, 2 kilometres to go for the 4 chasing riders.
And let's not forget there are 2 riders in between there. You've also still got Stephen Hodge, the Australian rider, and Marco Serpellini, the young Italian, the youngest rider in the Tour de France this year. But the race today is that of the champion of France, the Tricolore. And strangely enough, it's just a couple of days before the Bastille Day. So it's a great day for the French. I think they suffered last year to get a victory, and Pascal Linos was a photograph on the finish line. But this is a great win.
I tell you, that's the first time he's dared himself to glance over the shoulder, and what he will have seen is a long, straight, empty road. So very shortly now, he'll begin to enjoy his Tour de France. He'll start to salute the crowd when he knows they're not going to catch him, and I think he's going to take the best of it very shortly, because he's not a man for the overall, he's a man for the day. And he indicated there, as if our cameraman, who is French, has said it's okay to him, because his hand flicked on the left-hand side of the bars.
He's really giving everything. Every last little bit of energy is coming out of his body here as he comes onto the fixed camera in the finish straight. He's all over the road, looking back all the time.
There we go.
A quick wave to his team manager, Bergerac, who's going to be a happy man tonight.
So that's just a final look over. Professionals don't make mistakes and allow riders to creep up on them. And now it's all over but the shouting and the glory. This time is not important to Jackie Giron, but the victory is, believe me, because this has lifted the pressure off the Tour now. A Frenchman has won the stage. On go the sunglasses. You pay me, I'll wear them. And he looks over his shoulder and says, that's it, we've done it. The first time the race has come into Cahors, the champion of France, Jackie Giron, crosses the line and throws kisses to the crowd.
Viva Jackie Giron, France's favorite son. But now a minute back, it's a 4-man race for second place.
I've faced
Here they are, they're going to shadow box it out and watch your tails, because the chase isn't far behind. But Hodge wants second place, and Serpellini even with the end. Look at the back. They're coming up on them, and they're going to try and get them. Bortolami is leading the sprint. And in fact, I'm not sure whether Hodge, he's playing a cat-and-mouse tactic here with Serpellini. They could be wiped out in the sprint. There's still 200 yards to go. As Bortolami wants Hen to come through. Hen hasn't got the legs, and Serpellini goes, and Hodge has let him go. He hasn't got the strength. So the youngest man in the Tour de France gets second, and that's a marvellous result for him, as Hodge of Australia just about gets third on the line, but they were right on him. And my goodness me, Bortolami was almost on Stephen Hodge on the line. I'm not too sure, in fact, whether Bortolami didn't get it. Mario Chiesa brings home the last of this breakaway, which gives us now 7 riders in. What a tremendous finish to the Tour de France, and now the sprinters who still race for the daily points competition. So they will want to score well, including the green jersey of Abdou Japarov. But we're going to see Jan Zurada again try and take them on, as we've got Francis Moreau on the left of our picture. And now, in fact, the little green jersey of Abdou Japarov waiting until he sees the line. Gertjan Turnisse, 4th or 5th in line, also going to have a little dig too. Uwe Raab is coming, but it looks like a battle, and Jan Zurada is taking on Abdou Japarov and Olaf Ludwig, and Abdou Japarov looking at the ground, and this time he beats Jan Zurada, and that makes something of a change.
So, Phil, in 3 hours, 38 minutes and 11 seconds, Jackie Durand, the Frenchman, covers 105 miles in that mad dash for second. It was Serpellini 55 seconds behind. The other principals, Rominger, Armstrong, Indurain, and Andreu. 4 of a lot of racers who finished together in the field, so no one loses any more than 1 minute 55 seconds in a field finish behind Jackie Durand, who found the time to talk with us following the race. A very happy man. His translation, he knew he'd make some noise somewhere in the Tour, and today was his last chance, because tomorrow we're going into the mountains, and that makes a very, very big difference. Close to 20%, Jackie, of your fellow racers have not been through the Pyrenees as of yet. We're going to find out who can climb. Miguel Indurain still wearing the yellow jersey. Rominger close behind, but remember, 2.5 minutes behind. He's going to have some trouble making up that kind of time in the mountains.